The breakthrough. In the shadow of climate catastrophe and dwindling resources, humanity's future hung in the balance. The year was 2089, and Earth scientists were engaged in a desperate race against time. While some worked to heal the planet, others looked to the stars, knowing that humanity's survival might depend on reaching beyond their single fragile world. Dr. Elena Reyes stood in the control room of the Artemis research station, orbiting silently above Earth. Through the reinforced viewport, the planet below showed the scars of centuries of exploitation. Vast brown patches where forests once stood, coastlines reshaped by rising seas, and the artificial light of megacities housing billions of desperate souls. Final containment field test, initiating in 3 minutes, announced the facility's eye. Elena's fingers tapped nervously against her tablet. This was their 47th attempt at stabilizing an antimatter containment field. The previous 46 had failed, some spectacularly. 12 researchers had died over the past decade pursuing this seemingly impossible technology. But today felt different. All stations, report, Elena commanded, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. One by one, her team confirmed readiness. Dr. Kenji Takahashi at Particle Dynamics, Dr. Aisha Ibrahim, managing quantum field stabilizers, and Dr. Carlos Vega monitoring the experimental computer system they'd developed specifically for the millisecond adjustments needed to maintain containment. This time, we've solved the cascade failure problem, Carlos said, his eyes never leaving his monitors. The quantum processors can predict field fluctuations before they occur. Elena nodded. Let's make history, people. The countdown reached 0. Deep within the station's heavily shielded core, positrons and electrons met in a carefully orchestrated dance. In previous tests, the resulting energy had inevitably broken free of its magnetic prison within seconds. Field stability at 99.7%, Aisha reported, her voice rising with excitement. Maintaining, Carlos added. Quantum prediction matrix is compensating for all variations. We're holding it. Minutes passed, then an hour. The antimatter reaction continued, stable and contained. When they finally powered down the experiment after 6 hours, the control room erupted into cheers. Elena found herself embraced by Kenji, tears streaming down both their faces. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. News of the breakthrough spread rapidly. Within days, the United Earth Coalition, a tenuous alliance of the planet's remaining functional governments, convened an emergency session. For the first time in decades, humanity had something that united them: hope. The antimatter containment system works, Elena explained to the assembled leaders. With this technology, we can build engines capable of reaching relativistic speeds. The nearest potentially habitable systems would be within reach, decades of travel instead of centuries. The energy requirements for production, asked the Chinese premier. Substantial, Elena admitted, but we've designed a solar collection system that can be built at Mercury's orbit. The energy potential of antimatter makes the investment worthwhile. The Brazilian president leaned forward. And the danger. We all remember the Singapore incident. Elena's expression sobered. The failed antimatter experiment that had vaporized an entire research facility and created a crater where part of Singapore once stood had nearly ended all antimatter research. The difference is our adaptive containment fields, she explained. Previous systems tried to create perfect, static containment. Ours acknowledges imperfection and continuously adapts. It's like balancing a broom on your finger. Constant small adjustments keep it upright. After weeks of debate, the coalition reached a historic decision. Earth would commit its remaining resources to the construction of the first antimatter-powered vessel, the Earth Coalition vessel Genesis. 5 years later, Captain Darius Washington stood on the bridge of the completed Genesis, a marvel of human engineering. At 800 meters long, the vessel incorporated every technological advancement humanity could muster. Its heart was the antimatter drive system, capable of accelerating the ship to 15% of light speed. "All systems nominal, Captain," reported Commander Sarah Lynn, his executive officer. "Final checks complete." Darius nodded, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. "Very well. Signal Earth Control that we are ready for departure." Within the hour, the Genesis fired its conventional thrusters, moving away from Earth's orbital shipyard. Once at a safe distance, the antimatter drive engaged for the first time outside of testing. The effect was immediate and breathtaking. The Genesis surged forward with acceleration that would have been impossible with conventional drives, pushing against its inertial dampeners as it prepared to take humanity to the stars. Their mission: to explore the Tav-Ceti system, 12 light-years from Earth, where probes had detected potentially habitable worlds. The journey proceeded smoothly for the first months. The crew of 200 scientists, engineers, and colonization specialists settled into their roles. The antimatter drive performed beyond expectations, and spirits were high. Then, 8 months into their voyage, Commander Lynn noticed an anomaly on the long-range sensors. "Captain, there's something approaching at high velocity," she reported. "Configuration unknown." Darius frowned. "From what direction?" "That's what's strange, sir. It's coming from Tav-Ceti, as if something is heading to intercept us." The object closed rapidly, its speed suggesting a drive system far beyond human capability. As it neared, the sensors revealed a vessel approximately twice the size of the Genesis, with an elegant organic design unlike anything conceived by human engineers. "They're broadcasting some kind of signal," reported Communications Officer Rivera. "It's not radio. I'm not even sure what this is." "Run it through all decryption and translation protocols," Darius ordered, his voice calm despite the storm of questions in his mind. First contact with an alien civilization had always been a theoretical possibility of their mission, but no one had expected it to happen in interstellar space before they'd even reached their destination. Hours passed as the alien vessel matched course with the Genesis, maintaining a distance of 10,000 kilometers. The ship's computer systems worked feverishly to decode the alien transmission. Finally, Rivera looked up from his station. "Captain, I think we've got something. The computer has identified patterns consistent with language. It's constructing a rudimentary translation." "Put it on screen," Darius ordered. Symbols flashed across the main view screen, gradually resolving into English text. "Unidentified vessel. UAVENTRED regulated space. Your propulsion signature violates CONSOR of TYUM protoxeos. Prepare for inspection." Darius exchanged looks with Commander Lynn. "It seems we've stumbled into someone's territory, and they're concerned about our engines." "What should we do, Captain?" Lynn asked. Darius straightened his uniform. "We came as explorers, not invaders. Open a channel and transmit our first contact protocol. Let them know we're willing to comply with their inspection." The response came quickly. "Prepare to receive representate VEs. Deactivate propulsion systems." 6 hours later, a smaller craft departed from the alien vessel and approached the Genesis. Following careful procedures developed by xenobiologists for a scenario they had never truly expected to use, the crew prepared the ship's conference room for the arrival of humanity's first alien visitors. When the alien craft docked with the Genesis, Darius felt his heart pounding. He stood with Lynn and Dr. Elena Rice, now chief scientist of the mission, as the airlock cycled. The beings that emerged were bipedal and roughly humanoid, but clearly alien. Standing approximately 2 meters tall, they had iridescent scaled skin in shades of blue and green, large eyes with vertical pupils, and 6-fingered hands. They wore what appeared to be form-fitting ceremonial armor, with insignias that presumably denoted rank. The lead alien stepped forward, carrying a device that emitted a soft glow. When it spoke, the device translated its harmonic vocalizations into precise English. I am Senior Inspector Zex Terrell of the Galactic Consortium. Your vessel is utilizing prohibited energy technology. Explain your presence and capabilities immediately. Darius stepped forward. I am Captain Darius Washington of the Earth Coalition vessel Genesis. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration from our homeworld. We were unaware of any regulations concerning our propulsion system. The aliens' eyes narrowed, their pupils contracting to thin slits. Unaware. What species sanctions the development of antimatter propulsion without consortium oversight? Such technology is strictly regulated throughout civilized space. Elena stepped forward. Perhaps you could explain the nature of these regulations. We've only recently developed this technology. The alien inspector turned to Elena, studying her with those disconcerting vertical pupils. Antimatter containment at your apparent technological level should be impossible. Our scans indicate your civilization has barely achieved system-wide colonization. Yet you're utilizing Tier 3 propulsion technology. We developed it out of necessity, Elena explained. Our planet is facing severe environmental challenges. We needed to reach other habitable worlds quickly. So you risk antimatter containment failure? Another alien asked, clearly astonished. The potential for catastrophic destruction didn't dissuade you. Darius and Elena exchanged glances. We calculated the risks, Darius said carefully, and determined they were acceptable given our situation. The lead inspector made a gesture to his companions that the translators couldn't interpret. This requires immediate report to Consortium High Command. Your vessel must follow us to the nearest Consortium outpost for full evaluation. We are on a mission with specific objectives, Darius countered. While we're happy to establish peaceful relations, we cannot abandon our mission. You misunderstand, Captain, Zex Terrell said, his tone hardening. This is not a request. Unregulated antimatter technology represents a severe violation of Consortium's safety protocols. Your cooperation is required by interstellar law. Laws we were unaware of and never agreed to, Darius pointed out. The alien scales rippled in what might have been agitation. Ignorance of the law does not exempt you from it. You will follow us to Outpost Kessari for evaluation. The alternative would be unfortunate. As the first contact meeting continued, tensions mounted. The aliens were clearly disturbed by humanity's development of antimatter technology, without the careful oversight their civilization deemed essential. Meanwhile, Darius and his crew struggled to navigate the unexpected diplomatic challenge while protecting Earth's interests. By the meeting's end, a fragile compromise was reached. The Genesis would continue to Ta Ceti, but accompanied by the Consortium vessel. Once there, they would establish communications with Earth and arrange for formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Consortium. As the alien delegation departed, Elena turned to Darius, her expression troubled. They're afraid of us, she said quietly. Yes, Darius agreed, but not because of our weapons or aggression. They're afraid because we developed something they consider impossibly dangerous, and we did it without hesitation. Commander Lin joined them, watching through the viewport as the alien shuttle returned to its mothership. What does that mean for us? For Earth? Darius's gaze remained fixed on the alien vessel. It means, Commander, that humanity has just announced its presence to the galaxy, and our calling card was our willingness to do the impossible, no matter the risk. The confrontation. 3 months after first contact, the ECV Genesis orbited a habitable moon in the Ta Ceti system, now accompanied by not 1 but 3 consortium vessels. What had begun as an exploration mission had transformed into an increasingly tense diplomatic standoff. Captain Darius Washington stood in the Genesis's communication center, facing a screen showing the grim expressions of Earth's Leadership Council. The superluminal communication relay provided by the consortium allowed real-time conversation across 12 light-years, a technology that both impressed and concerned Earth's scientists. The consortium representatives have made their position clear, Darius reported. They're demanding oversight of all our antimatter production facilities and veto power over any future vessels utilizing the technology. President Amara Okafor of the United Earth Coalition leaned forward. And if we refuse? They've been diplomatically vague about consequences, Madam President, but their fleet movements suggest they're positioning assets throughout neighboring systems. Intelligence gathered from friendly consortium sources indicates they're concerned about our technological development rate. Let me understand this correctly, said Director Zhang of the Chinese Space Administration. An alien government we've never heard of until recently is demanding control over our most advanced technology because they think we're developing too quickly. That's essentially correct, Director, Alina Reyes replied, standing beside Darius. The consortium operates on what they call the tiered development protocol. Species are expected to advance through specific technological stages at predetermined rates, with oversight to prevent what they term destabilizing innovations. And humanity has violated this protocol, President Okafor concluded. Dramatically, Darius confirmed. Based on our level of planetary development and interplanetary colonization, we should be generations away from stable antimatter containment according to their models. A new voice joined the conversation. Admiral Hassan of Earth Fleet Command. How capable are their military forces, Captain? If this turns confrontational, what are we facing? Darius hesitated. Their technology is advanced in some areas. FTL communication, shield systems, and energy, weapons. However, our antimatter power generation actually exceeds their capabilities in raw output. They use a safer but less efficient form of quantum vacuum energy. Elena added, they prioritize safety and stability over efficiency. Their entire civilization appears built around minimizing risk. While we built our starship by converting the most dangerous substance in the universe into a propulsion system, Admiral Hassan observed dryly. Exactly, Elena nodded. And that fundamental difference in approach is what concerns them most. President Okafor was silent for a long moment. Captain Washington, what is your assessment? Should we accede to their demands? Darius straightened. Madam President, with respect, I believe that would be a mistake. The consortium's protocols would severely restrict our development and exploration for centuries. Earth cannot afford such delays given our planetary situation. I concur, Elena added. The consortium's approach to technological development is laudably cautious, but fundamentally incompatible with humanity's current needs. After further discussion, the decision was made. Earth would reject the consortium's demands for oversight, while proposing an alternative. A mutual exchange of knowledge and limited technological collaboration with safety assurances, but no restrictions on human development. 2 days later, Captain Marcus Chen of the newly arrived ECV Prometheus joined Darius for the next meeting with the consortium representatives. The Prometheus was the second antimatter vessel constructed by Earth, larger and more advanced than the Genesis, and its arrival had visibly unsettled the consortium observers. The meeting took place in a neutral facility constructed in orbit around Tau Ceti. Senior Inspector Zex Terrell led the consortium delegation, now expanded to include representatives from 5 different species. Captain Washington, your leadership has considered our proposal, Zex Terrell inquired, his translator rendering his harmonics into clipped, formal English. They have, Darius confirmed. Earth appreciates the consortium's concern for safety and stability. However, we must respectfully decline the oversight provisions as currently structured. A ripple of agitation passed through the alien delegation. A crystalline being, introduced as Aspect Vileshar of the Entori, emitted sharp, clicking sounds that the translator rendered with obvious emotional markers. Unacceptable. These humans demonstrate precisely why the protocols exist. They harness antimatter before achieving unified planetary governance or even resolving their climate crisis. Captain Chen stepped forward. With respect, it is because of those very crises that we pursued this technology. The protocols you reference may work well for species with thousands of years to develop, but humanity faces extinction without rapid expansion beyond our homeworld. Many species face evolutionary challenges, countered another alien, a methane breather whose environment suit concealed most of its features. The protocols prevent desperate civilizations from destroying themselves, and potentially others, with premature technological advancement. Darius maintained a diplomatic tone. We understand your concerns. That's why we're proposing an alternative, a cultural and technological exchange program. We will share our antimatter containment breakthroughs, and in return, request knowledge that might help us address Earth's environmental crisis. Share antimatter technology. Zexteril seemed genuinely shocked. You would freely distribute such dangerous knowledge. With appropriate safeguards, Elena clarified. But yes, we believe progress comes through collaboration, not restriction. The meeting continued for hours, with the consortium representatives growing increasingly frustrated by human intransigence. Finally, Zexteril delivered the consortium's response. The Galactic Consortium cannot permit unregulated antimatter technology. You leave us no choice but to implement containment protocols. His vertical pupils narrowed to barely visible slits. A quarantine fleet will arrive within 30 of your days. Until your species accepts proper oversight, all human vessels will be restricted to your home system. That would be an act of war, Captain Chen stated flatly. We prefer to call it regulatory enforcement, Zexteril replied. I suggest you reconsider your position before the enforcement fleet arrives. After the consortium representatives departed, Darius and Chen returned to the Genesis to confer with Earth leadership. The situation had escalated beyond diplomacy. How many vessels can we deploy to Ta City within the month? President Okafor asked Admiral Hassan. The Odysseus and Artemis are nearly complete. With emergency protocols, we could have 4 antimatter-powered ships here before their quarantine fleet arrives. And what good will 4 ships do against what could be hundreds? Director Zhang demanded. Elena Reyes, who had been silent during much of the exchange, suddenly spoke up. It's not about matching their numbers. It's about demonstrating what our ships can do. All eyes turned to her. The consortium fears our technology because they don't understand how we developed it so quickly, she continued. They're afraid because we took risks they would never consider. Perhaps it's time to show them why those risks were worthwhile. Admiral Hassan leaned forward. What exactly are you suggesting, Dr. Reyes? A demonstration, she replied. Not of our destructive capability, but of our technological advantage. If we can't match their numbers, we make numbers irrelevant. Over the next 3 weeks, Earth's antimatter fleet gathered at Ta City. The Genesis and Prometheus were joined by the Odysseus and Artemis, with the Horizon arriving just days before the consortium's deadline. Meanwhile, Elena worked with the engineering teams on what she simply called the contingency. When the consortium enforcement fleet arrived, it was precisely as intimidating as expected. Over 60 vessels of various sizes dropped out of FTL travel, arranging themselves in a blockade formation around the human ships. The flagship of the fleet dwarfed even the largest human vessel. From it came a direct transmission from Fleet Commander Oryxval, evidently a higher-ranking member of Zexteril's species. Human vessels, this system is now under consortium quarantine. You will power down your antimatter drives and prepare for boarding and inspection. Compliance is mandatory. From the bridge of the Genesis, now serving as the human fleet's command center, Captain Washington opened a channel to respond. Consortium Fleet, this is Captain Washington of Earth. We acknowledge your concerns regarding our technology. However, we cannot accept restrictions on our development or exploration rights. We propose one final attempt at diplomatic resolution before this situation escalates further. The time for diplomacy has passed, came the curt reply. You have 1 hour to comply with our directives, or we will disable your vessels and enforce compliance. As the channel closed, Darius turned to the assembled captains of Earth's small fleet and to Elena Reyes, whose contingency was now their only hope of avoiding either submission or destruction. Begin the operation, he ordered quietly. Elena nodded and opened a secure channel to all 5 Earth vessels. Initiate synchronized drive modification sequence. Quantum entanglement protocols active. Across the human fleet, Antimatter reactors that had been subtly modified over the previous weeks began to hum with increased energy. The modifications, based on Elena's theoretical work, weren't weapons. They were something the consortium would find far more disturbing, an entirely new application of antimatter physics that their cautious development protocols had never explored. On the consortium flagship, sensors detected the power fluctuations in the human vessels. "They're powering weapons," an officer reported. Fleet Commander Ulrich Spell gave the order, "Disable their drive systems. Targeted strikes only." Energy weapons from a dozen consortium vessels fired simultaneously, only to pass harmlessly through the locations where the human ships had been a millisecond earlier. "What happened?" Ulrich Spell demanded. "Where are they?" The answer came seconds later as all 5 human vessels reappeared, now positioned within the consortium fleet formation, impossibly close to their capital ships, in positions that should have been impossible to reach without detection. "Impossible," breathed the consortium's chief science officer. "They've achieved point-to-point spatial translation without an established wormhole infrastructure." Before the consortium fleet could react, the human vessels vanished again, reappearing in a perfect formation facing the alien armada. Captain Washington opened a channel. "As you can see, Commander, our antimatter technology has applications your protocols never anticipated. What you just witnessed was a controlled quantum displacement, what humans might call a jump drive, powered by our antimatter reactors." He paused, letting that sink in. "We could just as easily have appeared inside your vessels rather than alongside them. We chose not to. Remember that." The consortium fleet held position, clearly stunned by the demonstration. "We don't want conflict," Darius continued, "but we will not accept restrictions on our development. The question is whether the consortium is willing to adapt its protocols to accommodate a species that develops differently than expected." Hours later, in emergency discussions with consortium leadership, the true impact of humanity's demonstration became clear. They hadn't just shown military capability. They demonstrated that their understanding of antimatter physics had already diverged dramatically from consortium science. "Your containment technology was concerning enough," Zex Terrell admitted during renewed negotiations. "But this application, translating matter through spacetime, using antimatter reactions, our scientists considered it theoretically impossible." "We have a saying on Earth," Elena replied. "Necessity is the mother of invention. When survival depends on solving a problem, humans tend to find solutions others might overlook. Or solutions too dangerous to consider," Ulrich Spell countered, though his tone had lost much of its earlier certainty. The standoff at Ta Sidi lasted 2 more days before the consortium leadership made an unprecedented decision. The quarantine would be lifted, and humanity would be granted a special dispensation from standard development protocols, the first such exception in the consortium's 6,000-year history. "Your species represents a unique case," Ulrich Spell informed them. "The Council recognizes that standard protocols may be inappropriate for humanity's particular circumstances." What went unspoken but understood by both sides was the simple truth. The consortium had realized that attempting to contain humanity would be more dangerous than allowing them to develop on their own terms. As the consortium fleet prepared to depart, leaving behind only diplomatic observers, Captain Washington received a private message from Fleet Commander Ulrich Spell. "Captain, a personal observation. In my 3 centuries of service, I've encountered 17 emerging species. All followed predictable patterns of development and readily accepted consortium guidance. Until now." The alien commander paused. "Your willingness to pursue potentially catastrophic technology to ensure your survival is disturbing, but also worthy of respect." Darius considered his response carefully. "Commander, humanity doesn't seek to disturb the galactic order, but we've spent our history overcoming existential challenges. It shaped our approach to problems and opportunities." "Indeed," Ulrich Spell replied. "The consortium will be watching your progress with great interest and perhaps some apprehension." As the communication ended, Darius gazed at the view screen showing Earth's small fleet against the backdrop of stars. 5 ships that had just changed humanity's place in the galaxy through a demonstration of technological innovation that had stunned a civilization thousands of years older than their own. They still don't understand, do they? Commander Lin said quietly, standing beside him. No, Darius agreed. They see our technology as dangerous because it developed outside their protocols. What truly frightens them is what it represents. Which is, Darius smiled slightly, that in the face of extinction, humans don't accept limitations, we overcome them. And that might be the most powerful technology of all. The resolution. 6 months after the standoff at Tau Ceti, humanity's position in the galactic community had undergone a seismic shift. What began as a single exploration mission had expanded into a complex diplomatic dance involving dozens of species, with Earth suddenly thrust onto the interstellar stage. In high orbit above Earth, the massive consortium diplomatic vessel Harmonious Discourse maintained position near the newly constructed Galactic Embassy Station. Inside one of the station's conference rooms, Dr. Elena Rice presented Earth's latest technological developments to a mixed audience of human officials and consortium representatives. The Antimatter production facility at Mercury orbit is now operating at full capacity, she explained, gesturing to the holographic display showing the massive solar collection array that powered humanity's most ambitious project. Production efficiency has increased by 37% thanks to refinements in the capture matrix. From the consortium side of the table, Science Director Kel Voss of the Harmony Council observed with the careful neutrality that had become characteristic of official consortium interactions with humans. His species resembled Earth cetaceans with their smooth gray-blue skin and large eyes, though they were fully amphibious rather than aquatic. These production rates exceed our models for your technology level, he noted. Again. Elena smiled diplomatically. We found that practical application often accelerates theoretical advancement. When our engineers work directly with technology rather than running simulations, unexpected efficiencies emerge. Yes, your hands-on approach, Kel Voss replied. Most concerning. Admiral Hassan, representing Earth's defense interests, leaned forward. Perhaps concerning to the consortium, Director, but necessary for us. The second wave of colony ships departs next month for the Epsilon Eridani system. Without accelerated antimatter production, millions remain on a dying Earth. This blunt reminder of humanity's motivation, survival, hung in the air. 6 months of diplomatic exchanges had failed to bridge this fundamental gap in perspective. The consortium valued stability and safety above all, while humanity valued results, especially when extinction loomed as the alternative. The meeting concluded with the usual exchange of technical data, heavily edited on both sides, and promises of continued cooperation. As the consortium representatives departed, United Earth President Okafor motioned for Elena and Admiral Hassan to remain. Their position hasn't changed, Okafor observed once they were alone. They're still trying to slow us down through bureaucratic means since direct intervention failed. They're afraid, Elena said simply. Our development rate terrifies them because it doesn't fit their models. The quantum displacement drive we demonstrated at Tau Ceti should have taken centuries to develop according to their technological progression charts. And now we have 12 antimatter vessels either completed or under construction, Hassan added, with more advanced capabilities than the Genesis. President Okafor stared out the viewport at the massive consortium ship. They're buying time, trying to understand us while limiting our expansion through diplomatic channels. The question is, what are they planning? That question was answered 3 weeks later, when long-range sensors detected a massive fleet of vessels emerging from FTL near the Kuiper Belt. Unlike the enforcement fleet at Tau Ceti, this armada numbered in the hundreds. From the bridge of the ECV Prometheus, now Earth's flagship, Captain Marcus Chen watched the tactical display with growing concern. Analysis. 217 vessels, Captain, reported Tactical Officer Rivera. Configuration matches consortium military designs, but these are larger. Weapons signatures active but not targeted. Chen opened a channel to Earth Command. Admiral, we're tracking a massive consortium fleet that just arrived in system. They're maintaining position at the heliopause. No aggressive movements yet. Admiral Hassan's voice came through, tense but controlled. All fleet vessels move to defensive positions. No provocative actions. Let's see what they want before we escalate. The answer came minutes later when the Prometheus received a direct transmission from the lead vessel of the consortium Armada. The face that appeared on the main view screen belonged to none other than Grand Arbiter Lurvax, the highest authority in the consortium's governance structure. Captain Chen of Earth, the aged alien intoned, his iridescent scales dulled with years, but his vertical pupils sharp and alert. I come representing the unanimous decision of the Consortium Council. Our previous approach to humanity has been reconsidered. Chen kept his expression neutral. Grand Arbiter, your fleet presents a concerning first impression for a diplomatic mission. A necessary precaution, Lurvax replied. The Council has determined that humanity represents a unique case in consortium history, a species developing critically dangerous technology at an unprecedented rate, driven by survival imperatives that override normal safety considerations. And you've brought hundreds of warships to inform us of this assessment? Chen asked dryly. The Grand Arbiter made a gesture that the translation system rendered as something between acknowledgement and resignation. These vessels are not here for the purpose you assume, Captain. Request permission to approach Earth orbit for direct discussions with your leadership. What I must propose should be delivered in person. After urgent consultations with Earth Command, the consortium flagship, a behemoth nearly 3 kilometers in length, was permitted to approach Earth, escorted by 4 antimatter-powered Earth vessels. The remaining consortium fleet maintained their position at the system's edge as a gesture of restraint. In the United Earth Coalition's New Geneva headquarters, humanity's leaders gathered to meet with the Grand Arbiter and his delegation. Dr. Elena Reyes, as the architect of humanity's antimatter breakthrough, was included despite not holding political office. The Grand Arbiter entered the chamber with a dignity that commanded attention, his entourage including representatives from 11 different species, the full diversity of the consortium's founding members. President Okafor, leaders of Earth, he began, his translator rendering his complex vocalizations into measured formal English. The Galactic Consortium has existed for over 6,000 of your years, guiding the development of dozens of species toward peaceful integration into the interstellar community. He paused, his vertical pupils sweeping across the human delegation. In all that time, we have never encountered a species quite like humanity. We've heard this assessment before, Arbiter, President Okafor replied evenly. If you've brought your fleet to reiterate concerns about our technological development. Not concerns, Lurvax interrupted. Recognition. The room fell silent. The consortium's protocols exist to prevent catastrophic technological missteps that could threaten not just developing species, but potentially the galaxy itself. Antimatter technology, in particular, has led to the self-destruction of 3 civilizations in our recorded history. The Arbiter gestured to one of his aides, who activated a holographic display showing technical specifications of consortium vessels. Yet humanity not only developed stable antimatter containment, but extended its application in ways our scientists considered theoretically impossible. You did this not out of hubris but necessity, and you did it without the mistakes that have destroyed others. Elena studied the displayed specifications with growing astonishment. The Arbiter was sharing detailed technical information about consortium military vessels, information that would have been unthinkable to reveal months earlier. Furthermore, Lurvax continued, our observation of human history reveals something our models fail to account for. Your species has an unusual relationship with existential risk. Where most species become more conservative when threatened, humans become more innovative, even reckless by our standards, yet somehow survive. Admiral Hassan couldn't contain a small smile. We call it thinking outside the box. Arbiter. Indeed, a characteristic the consortium's founding species lack, to our detriment. Lurvax's admission seemed to cost him some effort, which brings me to my proposal. The Grand Arbiter straightened, his full height impressive even among the diverse assemblage. The Consortium Council has voted to offer humanity full membership with special dispensation. Immediate Tier 3 status by passing the normal progression protocols. Murmurs spread through the human delegation. Additionally, and here the Arbiter's voice took on a different tone, we propose a technology exchange program far more comprehensive than previously discussed. The fleet that accompanied me includes our most advanced research vessels, engineers and scientists, all volunteering to work alongside humans to integrate our technologies. President Okafor studied the alien leader carefully. This is a dramatic reversal from your previous position, Arbiter. What prompted this change? Pragmatism, Lurvax replied simply. The Consortium has maintained peace for millennia through technological homogeneity and controlled development. Your species has demonstrated that our model is incomplete. We can either resist this reality, likely leading to conflict, or adapt. And the Council chose adaptation, Elin observed. By the narrowest of margins, the Arbiter admitted. But yes, your quantum displacement drive alone represents an advancement that would require decades to reverse engineer. Better to collaborate than compete. What followed were 2 weeks of intense negotiations as the initial proposal expanded into a comprehensive integration plan. Earth would gain access to Consortium FTL communication networks, medical technologies, and terraforming expertise crucial for rehabilitating Earth and developing colony worlds. In exchange, the Consortium would receive full technical specifications for antimatter containment and quantum displacement systems. There were, of course, safeguards. Earth agreed to abide by certain safety protocols and non-proliferation agreements regarding truly planet-killing technologies. The Consortium,